Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of December 2021. In terms of the stock market direction, I think it's going to be a down week overall. When I wrote these predictions back on Saturday, I did think that Monday is still going to be an up day, and then the rest of the week, especially towards the end of the week, is going to be down. But as I'm recording this on the 20th, it looks like Monday has already been a pretty bad day for the markets. So basically, my impression is that it will continue to kind of go downhill from here. And in fact, we have a few difficult weeks ahead of us, and some bubbles that have been forming in the market until now indeed may see basically bubbles pop either this week or into early January of 2022. Quickly, I wanted to cover some of the events that may have happened, or rather you may have seen in the news that had happened last week, just to kind of go over some of the predictions that I made. So specifically, one area is that I pointed out that there will be some increased news regarding things like steel or metal ore, or I guess iron ore, or mining in general, and this is indeed still in effect through the end of the month, but last week specifically I have seen some news like of Reuters, for example, where they covered how problems for the major companies in China like the Evergrande basically are leading to problems for steel manufacturers because of the decreased demand for steel and similar, basically putting some problems on the steel sector and leading to prices dropping. And for those areas, indeed, I think the times will be difficult through about the end of this year and will be somewhat fluctuating next year. And there may be another drop sometime in September, October of next year. Then another area sort of where I wanted to cover my predictions is when we had specific transit of Mars and Keto, or south node of the moon, being conjunct on the 15th. Those kind of transits, difficult transits between Mars and nodes of the moon, typically coincide with a variety of accidents or industrial disasters or attacks or some basically problematic, difficult, dangerous events. And what I've seen, of course, for the US, on the 10th, 11th of December, there was a really major wave of tornadoes, basically covering many states, and some of the more destructive tornadoes in the US history taking place with really excessive winds. And shortly after that, on the 15th, there was another really major, basically what's called a derecho, where again, many states, literally like, I think it was about 7 states in the middle of the US were affected, with the path of those winds spanning like hundreds of miles, about 100 million people in the US receiving some sort of weather warnings, and basically really, really strong and usually kind of a strong winds for December, causing a lot of travel delays and power outages and all kinds of problems. And that is, to me, interesting because, again, the Mars was specifically conjuncting South Node in Sagittarius, opposing North Node in Gemini, which those areas have to do with things like transportation, of course, communication, as well as signs of air and fire, which has to do with, again, to me, with winds, excessive speed, which is, of course, Mars brings things that are excessively hot, excessive, speeding, or excessively, aggressive or risky. Among some other similar developments, whether it's in the US or across other areas, where some, of course, there was a super typhoon Rai, or Odette, if you want to call it by the local name, that slammed into Philippines. That was on the 16th of December. Then there were several plane crashes, not necessarily as, noteworthy, and some major plane crashes in the past that occurred under similar Mars transits to moon nodes, but one was in Caribbean, Flo movie, reggaeton music producer, and his family unfortunately died in a plane crash. And then also that was on the 16th. On the following day, on the 17th, which is again within 2 days of this exact Mars Ketu conjunction, there were a couple small plane crashes in the US. Unfortunately, both were deadly. And one of them, a CEO of the company called My Go Flight had unfortunately passed away. Then again, globally on the 18th, there was a blast at a bank in Karachi in Pakistan where 16 people got injured. Then there was a major fire in like a high-rise, I guess, tall building in Japan and Osaka, I believe. And on the 19th, there was also a basically several rockets had been attacked, I guess, or hit Baghdad's green zone, where, of course, there was U.S. embassy, and of course, the rockets were able, or U.S. military, I guess, they were able to shoot down the rockets, but nevertheless, there was this attack right at that same time. And also, there was another incident in Bavaria in Germany where the U.S. military convoy had basically collided, I think, with some cars or trucks or something like that. Again, not a huge global level incident, but again, just a number of such incidents at this exact time. Another situation that again involves mining specifically occurred in Russia, and on the 19th, where there was basically a coal mine there and alarm had sounded, and luckily they were able to evacuate like 128 miners. Previously, I guess some time back, maybe a few weeks back, at that same mine they actually had a deadly accident there, so this time they were able to save people. Unfortunately, this propensity for accidents, and especially involving either tall buildings or mines or like large structures, is going to continue through like early January. And speaking of large structures, there was also an accident in China on the 19th in Hubei province, where basically there was a section of the expressway bridge had collapsed, and unfortunately 4 people were killed in that accident. And that's both, I think, an expression of the Mars conjunct Ketu on the 15th, or exactly on the 15th, which has to do with, again, communication, transportation, accidents. And at the same time, we're getting close to the Saturn and Uranus square, being exact on the 25th of December. And that particular transit has to do with specifically structural changes, sudden breakups, sudden, something that's solid and made of perhaps metal or steel suddenly giving way and causing, again, some sort of problems. And unfortunately, we were still in the approaching, I guess, exact time for that particular transit this week, but also into the next week as well. And that's definitely the kind of accidents that may still be occurring globally. And of course, on the 20th, just today, there was a major, like 6.2 earthquake off of the coast of California. And again, that's another type of manifestation that I would expect to continue. The uptick for large earthquakes may occur still both this week and into next week, and even into early January, with this Saturn square Uranus becoming more and more precise. And that's exactly the type of energy that but coincides with such situations. So something that's stable, something that's maybe like a mountain or a tall building or established corporation or established leader, where suddenly things are shaken up and something comes tumbling down. So it's a rock slide, earthquake, and the building comes down, or some old outdated part, or an old leader, or a leader who has been just maybe too stuck in their ways. They're removed, or the corporation that's been, again, functioning one way for a long time then starts some sort of process of restructuring, where some old useless parts, maybe some offices being basically terminated or removed, whether, again, by design or due to some sort of a unexpected tribulation. So that's still basically the energy for this week and for the next week. And those are the kind of examples we have experienced last week, which I think the more prominent ones were indeed those tornadoes and then derecho in the US that were occurred right around this exact time of Mars conjuncting Ketu. So moving on to this week, as I said, Monday I did predict it to be an up day again, 60% chance, not obviously 100% guarantee of one way or the other, but I did have a more hopeful upbeat expectation, in particular because I was expecting some increase in positive news for areas like IT, airlines, airspace, electric cars, electric vehicle, high tech, any sort of digital services, electronics, social media, etc. And I haven't seen in the news any specific projects announced in those areas, or again, perhaps I missed some, but basically if there are any new initiatives right around Monday that are related to these areas, perhaps like a new car, a new phone, new social media platform, new application of some sort, or some digital solution to something, or even a new digital assets, new service that's provided by, say, an online company, an online retailer, any such projects, or even leaders that oversee such projects that would be known or appear in the news on Monday, may actually see a good potential for being successful long term, and perhaps will be more successful, more stable long term, and especially more popular among younger people or people who are more sort of tech savvy or more tech oriented consumers. Generally, 13th through the 20th of December may see increased focus on variety of regulations, in particular sort of restrictive, I would say, regulations, things that kind of aim to restrict volatility, put maybe a stop to something, or remove some service or leader or product that's been basically outdated, doesn't serve its purpose anymore, or something that is seemed to be sort of a losing, I guess, player, so to speak. And it may also have to do with things like basically restructuring or coming up with new regulations that affect things like insurance, rates, taxes, loan, debt, as well as anything to do with underground locations or end of cycle kind of products, maybe like waste recycling or waste storage underground somewhere, or mines, anything to do with things that are discarded, old, outdated, so to speak. And in those areas, there may be regulations or restructuring. Like I said, maybe a company is going to, like especially in financial area, may announce some sort of restructuring plans, or something that aims to basically reduce maybe its share of taxes that it would like to pay, or something where it is seen as, again, is causing a loss, maybe on like an office or something overseas that they perhaps may choose to close. And similarly, there may be increased news, again, 13th through the 20th, about financial either fraud, manipulations, and again with the same aim of basically cutting losses, but it may be either associated with, again, either specifically underground locations, such as, again, a company like a mining company that literally does its business, in those underground locations, because that's just where, you go mine for coal, for example. At the same time, there may be also focus on underground locations being basically secretive or fraudulent kind of manipulations, and basically either companies or individuals being caught or accused of engaging in some basically illegal or manipulative financial activities. And around the 19th, there may be some sort of a change in the direction of either those regulations, or if there is a investigation going on into those illegal financial activities. And around the 19th, things may either be delayed, put on hold, or set aside for future sort of deliberations after additional kind of discovery period, or additional time for, for things to kind of ripen, or for additional data to be collected. And at the same time, as we've seen in the US with this Build Back Better bill that hasn't quite, or at least hasn't passed yet, or is certainly for now been set aside, it's something that right now is not the best time for reaching any sort of common, agreement related to finance. Is just not the best time under Saturn square Uranus, where some regulations may seem too much, or certain sort of new financial ideas or how to raise money, or regarding earnings, or regarding say for example rates, or anything that's new and an innovative idea right now is not likely to succeed, and players, or I guess partners who are discussing such agreements are less likely at this time to reach I guess mutual agree on a mutual sort of details of a particular maybe deal. And so with especially Venus going retrograde on the 19th of December, I would say it may be likely that any such discussions, bills that are being perhaps discussed, or anything that's related to like financial regulations is more likely to either pass or be revived, or some agreement may be reached in some way, maybe reduced shape, for example, but right around 2nd of March. So if there's a follow-up discussion, something that perhaps may again be revisited, it would be around, I'd say, early March, especially March 2nd is when there may be some sort of action that either will put things away once and for all, or will actually, some agreement, perhaps in a different, revised form of the bill, may actually be reached then. Another sort of major influence from about the mid-December through the end of December that's with us is again focused on things like IT, telecommunications, airlines, aerospace project, high tech, electric companies or electric gadgets, any sort of digital services or digital assets such as cryptocurrencies. And those areas may again experience either excessive regulations or something that causes delay in their functioning, service outages, some basically problems where they're either being excessively regulated, there are losses such as value of cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin and Ethereum going down, or there's some supply shortages or delays, like I mentioned, with the airlines, for example, or some quotas are imposed, or some embargo, or some price controls or tariffs. And again, that's where like airlines, high-tech sort of either devices, or like maybe cloud service providers of any sort of online services, even social media platforms. So again, there may be some increased focus on either regulations, restrictions, losses, delays, shortages, and generally kind of price or value rather of these services or these products going down. And as I mentioned last week, and this continues into basically the end of December, is increased focus on things like steel, like iron ore, metals, and again, metals and minerals, specifically like rare earth minerals that are used for some industrial purposes, like some for building, construction, appliances, and something that businesses that specifically either produce raw parts, for example, or mining companies, as well as appliance manufacturers, or even companies that are involved in shipping of either parts, raw materials, etc. All of those areas may be affected, and again, through the end of this month, and there may be either delays, shortages, value going down, some kind of basically sour mood there, and even to the point where there may be some industrial accidents. Again, if not accidents, it could just be seen as something that's basically some restriction, like this tightening grip, or decreased supply, decreased, need perhaps, or projects just a slowing down, and basically not the best time for those particular areas. And that's due to this tightening influence of Saturn Uranus square, which is quite precise again right about now into late December, and will continue on off, kind of squaring, the square will continue on off into 2022 and will become close to precise again in September, October of next year, right around the 11th of October. So that's something to pay attention to again this week and into next week, and we can expect similar type of news, similar type of either slowdown or losses or restrictions reappearing yet again September, October of 2022. Also, in addition to that, just generally again globally, there may be problems for with just natural disasters, where again there is increased probability of major earthquakes, major shakeups, be it where maybe something falls literally down like a rock slide, mudslide, a building comes crashing down, be due to a strong earthquake or just poor construction, some old part giving way, an airplane accident, unfortunately, or some accident involving transportation, communication, yet again, or it could be some other shocking, unexpected event that is associated with like power outages or just kind of structural damage, like maybe like if there's a dam or some sort of structure that is supposed to be holding and has been standing there for a long time. Unfortunately, it can give way suddenly, again, due to, say, an earthquake or just due to something being just too old and not being repaired on time. Like, as I just mentioned, that part of the expressway in China, like the whole section just came down. Unfortunately, again, we may see more of similar type of situations. And in particular, again, it could occur underground, like in a mine. And this is going to continue even into early January, where, again, there are problems separately that may be related to mines, where there may be, again, that's more like really late December, early January, where there may be situations involving like a big blast where maybe there's accumulation of some poisonous gas or flammable gas or some particles that can be easily ignited, and things kind of expand. And if there's indeed an accident, things may just explode. And again, of course, that would also cause things to kind of be shaken up and come down. And again, that's through even the week of January 10. So moving along for what focus on this week, let's see. For both globally and for the US, as I mentioned previously already, it is an important month where we may hear, and already we have heard some news, I guess, about financial regulations, about like the Federal Reserve plans, and that peaked around the 15th of December. But again, through the end of the month, there may still be increased news about financial regulations, debt, loans, taxes, etc. out of the US. And we have seen indeed an uptick in the price of value of gold and silver right around the 15th, 16th, as I had been predicting. It did for now seem to have peaked around the 17th. And at this point, I don't really see it going up much higher, except maybe indeed right at the end of the month into early January, if there is a some sort of a industrial disaster that involves like a gold mine, which there's a possibility of that may potentially affect, or there may be increased news about gold again, but more with focus not necessarily on the value of it, but more along the lines of some, just the activity of mining, or there being some disaster associated with like a gold mine potentially. But in terms of it being, again, experiencing another sort of supportive influence, like concerns about inflation driving prices up or something like that, there's not going to be another like event in the near future. Let's see. For the US, also through the end of this month, we may see increased news generally and focus on things like communication and transportation, also international partnerships like commerce, retail sales, and financial policies regulating those areas. And so the focus may be kind of reducing the, I guess, overexpansion, or if there's increased volatility, trying to kind of reduce, the hype of some asset, or basically control inflation, and making things a little bit more, I guess, controllable. And there may be some increased regulation even beyond what we've seen on around the 15th. So last week, there may still be follow-up regulations or some news about basically either activities that are intended to control inflation, or even regulate cryptocurrencies, regulate basically assets such in order to introduce stability and reduce, I guess, volatility in the markets. And these kind of activities, if indeed they come up through the end of the month, will continue bring investors focus on more like tangible assets and are more favorable for assets that are seen to be as sort of long-term hold rather than more volatile kind of assets that are not necessarily based in anything tangible, which again, for cryptocurrencies, I think the end of the December doesn't look so great. Let's see, and then for December, approximately from the 21st, so Tuesday through the 22nd, and especially on the 22nd of December, yet again, there may be focus on globally on things like, again, financial fraud, taxes, like maybe tax avoidance or debt. So if there are indeed maybe companies, say in China, like at Evergrande, there may be some more news or focus or concerns about like basically insolvency or debt, or basically lack of perhaps like cash flow or reduced asset availability. Perhaps it's maybe harder, of course, for banks to get loans, and that could be the focus again through the 27th and especially on the 22nd of December, and that's globally. And for the US, 21st and 22nd are significant, where there may be focus on either important politicians, important persons such as maybe actors, or just some celebrities, or some basically influential persons. And that could be in connection with either legal issues, lawsuits, but also foreign relations. So something either about their foreign travel or foreign partnerships, or just some sort of cultural clash, perhaps, if they are, somebody who's like an immigrant or something like that, or about them being subject to a lawsuit, for example. And also there may be generally 21st, 22nd in the US may see some news about either new laws or just changes in the laws, regulations, and again related to either some sort of international partnerships, foreign relations, long-distance travel, shipping things, again, across international borders, as well as either finance, currencies, and again, with focus on this international trade. So there could be some disruption there, or some disappointing news, or perhaps the permanent person is the CEO of some important corporation, especially if it relates to like shipment, for example, and they're portrayed in a negative light, where perhaps they're not very cooperative, or the deal that's reached with some international partners, again, related to like this international trade or commerce or shipping things across, again, borders, is not very favorable for the US, or the deal is not reached, or the regulations are not clear, or the regulations are set with these new laws, but they're not very helpful for, again, companies that are trying to either trade with international partners or ship products internationally. And basically there may be some legal decision or some regulation that is not seen as helpful, or a leader that is seen as not very, competent, or a leader who is maybe not very is making some like a poor judgment when it comes to negotiating something with international partners. Maybe they say something that is culturally offensive, for example, or there's some regulation and there are some concerns about its legality, or whether or not it's affecting, like, for example, international relations in the negative way, or it's especially affecting, like, again, trade, commerce, and shipments, again, negatively. So that's for the 21st, 22nd for the US. Then for the 23rd for the US, 23rd of December, may see actually also disappointing news about things like earnings or financial losses. Perhaps there's some earnings report that's not as, I guess, earnings are a lot less than expected, or perhaps there's some financial losses or excessive expenses, something costs more than was expected, or there's some disagreement between partners where, again, a financial agreement cannot quite be reached, or and it could be due to the concerns about the value of something that maybe is seen by one of the partners as excessive, and therefore the agreement cannot be reached, or even the value of the project, not necessarily financial, but sort of the meaning of it, how meaningful something is not, there is no agreement about that. And so again, right around the 23rd, these issues may kind of peak in the US. And again, if there's any sort of bill that needs to be signed, or any financial, I guess, agreement, or if, you know, partners are sitting down to maybe evaluate like a sale, for example, there may be, again, reduced chances for that agreement to be reached because of these kind of differences in the opinion about the value of something. Then again, for the US, 23rd through the 27th, especially the 25th, may see yet again focus on like new leaders, new beginnings, new vision for the future, some plans for about the next 2.5 years or so, and especially related to things like long distance transportation, travel, foreign relations, higher education, or just expanding, you know, international partnerships. And again, whatever, if there's a new leader or there's a new project that begins at this time, it may actually be, it may last, or the leader's position may change in about 2.5 years, or the plans may change again in about 2.5 years. And this could involve like international collaboration regarding, again, communication, transportation, but with focus on anything that's like an airplane or high tech or digital, has digital edge to it, like e-vehicles or power plants or aerospace projects. So especially with focus on, say, military, maybe there's like a military partnership or weapons sales or development of some high tech equipment that can be used for military or could be used athletes, or something that's like new, innovative, high-tech sort of technology. Again, maybe some partnerships for developing or for sales of some sort of either weapons or airplanes or some other kind of devices that either can be used. Again, I'm talking basically about margin energy, so they can be used for either firing something, heating something, or perhaps some other kind of either, you know, if it's a chemical that specifically is used for exploding something, you know, it could be used for mining, for example, it could be other uses, or, you know, in fireworks, or some new devices that are like a fast car that's used for racing. But basically, either, so it could be a military leader, it could be an athletic kind of sports leader, or it could be projects that are related, again, to developing these new technologies that are perhaps are like high tech. Could be, again, airplanes, for example, or drones, something that's flying or moves really fast, like a car, and it has this kind of a innovation flavor to it, but also is meant to either move fast, and again, it's used for either military or sports or any situations where something needs to be sort of really techy and moving fast. So again, like maybe aerospace exploration or like a rocket of some sort. And again, there could be a new leader announced right around the 23rd, 27th through the 27th, or a new project. And whatever is announced at this time will be sort of in place or being developed for next 2.5 years or so. So any contracts, whoever lends them, there should be good for about 2.5 years. The 24th, of course, markets will be closed. That's Friday. But then the 25th, again, it's still an important day, Saturday, and both globally and for the US, 25th plus minus a few days. Yet again, there will be increased focus on all of these like aerospace projects, high-tech sort of innovation. And at this time, if there are any disputes, for example, with partners or disputes among leaders in the US, they may escalate a little bit more quickly because, again, there may be a feel of like whoever is going to be doing the negotiation, they may be feeling a little bit more aggressive or like taking on more risks, or will have like shorter fuse, so to speak, and or contracts or discussions or news may focus again on things that are applicable to like either sports or military, and can be, again, featuring some high-tech element to it, like maybe a new satellite or some even Space Force, asteroid mining, and they can be kind of more risky, more aggressive, more innovative than before. However, again, if a project, one of these projects is actually being like granted a contract or is implemented, it actually will be sort of around for the next 2.5 years or so. So now let's talk about the rest of the year and into early January, because this is another important period ahead of us. And specifically, right at the end of the year, we will have Jupiter entering into Pisces, which will bring increased focus on all the Piscean energy. So this could be, of course, pharmaceuticals, of course, infectious diseases, chemicals, oil, gas, navy, any marine life related, maritime transportation, as well as, of course, religion, beverages, drugs, poisons, lies, or anything that's not really a lie, but rather a fairy tale, like a movie, for example. So all of those areas will see increase of expansion, and for better or worse. So maybe there are more news about people basically taking drugs and poisoning themselves with some crap, excuse my language, or there could be news about a fascinating new movie coming out that is maybe is like another sci-fi kind of a story, or something that is like a fairy tale that becomes very, very popular, like another series that becomes really popular and will have many sequels over the years. At the same time, right around the end of the year and into January, Jupiter is going to be squaring nodes of the moon, which again, it usually symbolizes something that is of importance to many groups of people. And with Jupiter, it could be something like a legislation of some sort being passed by, like, Supreme Court decides something. And for example, back in December 1970, there were a couple acts passed right when Jupiter was squaring the nodes. One was, of course, OSHA, and another one had to do with basically packaging to make sure that kids couldn't open, certain packages that would contain, like, maybe some chemicals or some drugs or something, and they couldn't poison themselves. So basically what we can expect is perhaps similar type of legislation being passed, or some regulatory changes that affect areas that are related to involved signs, which again, Jupiter is going to be in Pisces. So again, this could be oil, could be gas, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, things like that. And the nodes of the moon are going to be, according to Western astrology, at least, in Sagittarius and Gemini, which has to do with communication and transportation. So it could be indeed some legislation that affects how basically people are traveling, who is allowed to travel, under what conditions. This could be related to concerns about COVID, but it could be related to anything else, really. It could be just to regulate, to make sure that people can travel more safely, or that something that is shipped that is maybe considered to be like a hazardous material, like oil or some chemical, is shipped in a more safer, in a safer kind of a container with more regulations. Another area, of course, that could be affected has to do with immigration. So there could be some announcement related to immigration, or basically either regulations in that area, or perhaps announcement of some large group of people being transported somewhere, either moved, or them going somewhere, or them being granted a different status. But again, this would be a large group of people all being granted either the same status all in one go, or moving again as a large group. Let's see, and other areas that may be featured with this Jupiter square nodes aspect, again, end of December to early January 2022, is where things kind of expand beyond control, like I said, like a bubble of some sort that then pops, or it could be literally some sort of something that's gas, or something that's in the air, like if in the mine you have, again, I'm not obviously somebody who worked ever in the mine, but I'm just looking at the previous transits that were similar and what had happened. And so some of the situations that had occurred is when basically there were a lot of small particles that were flammable, or some gases that would expand and then they would ignite, and it would result in a large blast. And again, combining this with the Saturn square Uranus right at the same time, again, makes me think of either mine or some area where something gets trapped, like cave or some underground location where something like that gas expands, but there's then no place for it to go, and something ignites, and then there's a blast. And for the markets, of course, it could be similar to there being, again, a bubble of, again, most likely related to, again, same signs of communication, transportation companies, as well as anything related to like oil, gas, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, beverages, movies, and I guess music and things of that nature, so Neptunian areas. So one or more of companies related to these areas, they may experience a sudden sort of spike in value, right? Maybe around, say, 30th or so, and then by early January, the value may again quickly drop. And also for specifically Bitcoin, we may also experience a similar, like a quick reversal in the value, and I think it may be a short-lived rally, right? Maybe just a few days, 30th through the 2nd or through the 3rd, just a few days in January, and again, things may quickly come down. Then for China, interestingly, in addition to this just being a global prediction, that what I just mentioned, for China specifically, the 30th of December through the 1st of January, we'll see a difficult transit of Mars to Saturn, which may indicate a couple of things. One, just difficulty with like partners, some difficult negotiations or delays in reaching agreements, or some other like even disasters, like an industrial disasters that involves like a shakeup, or it could be a shakeup of a corporation where a corporation decides to go through restructuring, remove its leaders, or change leadership, I suppose. But again, it could be also, again, an earthquake or industrial disaster, or like more of kind of some structures kind of tumbling down, because Saturn has to do with either large corporations, the governmental leaders, large stable structures, or literally earth, mountains, bridges, etc. And things may have to do with either these leaders or these corporations kind of being basically either seen as a loss, seen as something that's outdated, worn out, or the problem could be because of the worn out part, something that's been basically grinding and is just too old, hasn't been repaired, and now it gives way. And or there may be either intentional focus on discarding something that's like seen as polluting or is kind of at the end of its life cycle, or it could be due to there being again an accident or some sort of industrial disaster where something that has been discarded but it wasn't quite properly taken care of is now causing problems. So maybe there's lack of safety in something like an underground situation, or it could be related again to the 12th house area. So it could be like a lab, a hospital, a monastery, or prison, some secluded far away location like on the island somewhere, and that location basically experiences some problems where something was forgotten there, or something just kind of was discarded and proper safety measures weren't taken, and now it's causing a sudden problem. And so by releasing some pollutant into the environment, for example, and so now there may be a push to basically address and or maybe restructure how, say, for example, waste is stored or how something is recycled. And that's right at the end of December and early January for China. Let's see, and for global, as I mentioned, this influence of Jupiter both going into Pisces and squaring the nodes is going to be felt through about December 30th through January 7th, especially 3rd through the 5th. So if there are indeed any sort of losses, like maybe this in the US, if the issue about the mandate, I guess, for the vaccines for private companies is going to go, for example, to Supreme Court, that's where I would expect there being some sort of decision. But again, it could be also related to just other immigration-related issues, or something that governs like travel or transportation of something that's seen as unsafe, either to make sure that people are transported safely, or that some chemical is transported safely, or if there's, for example, an issue with transporting oil or gas, again, that those are taken care of in some safe manner, and there may be some specific regulations that may come out around end of December, early January to take care of that, basically. Let's see, then globally, around the week of the 10th of January, maybe now also a difficult time, again, continuing probability, increased probability for like earthquakes, disasters, and variety of like regulations that may be put into law that may either constrict, or not constrict necessarily, but kind of impose additional, I guess, restrictions on either movement of people or goods. And again, not necessarily to prevent them from moving, but just to make sure that things are more safer, I suppose. And but on the at the same time, at the week of January 10th, there may be some problems related to either bad weather where we'll see excessive precipitation or some problems that are resulting in some pollution, maybe like a fire at an oil rig or like a oil tanker again having some problems and either releasing pollution into the water or just being, stuck somewhere. Or there's some problems for transporting something that's like a chemical or medicine, or there's like a Navy ship somewhere that is experiencing a problem, or it could be again through just bad weather, accident, or it could be through somebody's secretive or deceptive actions where again there is something that's again maybe some companies not employing proper safety protocols and they're releasing unfortunately some pollutant into the environment, or it could be again somebody who perhaps they were again because of Neptunian influence here with Pisces, it has to do with again deception but also excessive sort of consumption perhaps of alcohol or being in some state of mind that's not like the right state of mind because of some influence, for example. And so somebody that is like maybe a driver of or like a train or something like that, train conductor, I don't know, who is either confused or maybe they're just not feeling well and they have this mental fog and they make a mistake. So it could be something along the lines of there being either excessive speed, but again it could be due to either some confusion, some deceptive actions, or just somebody being basically under some influence. And just generally speaking, the week of January 10 may see also some drop in oil prices, some problems for oil and gas industry, some problems for maritime transportation, as well as potentially issues with contamination either of water or contamination through some chemical getting out, say into water especially, or some problems where again maybe there's like a ferry and it's overloaded, but basically those kind of issues, or again a fire at the marina, fire on the oil rig, or basically a fire on some ship, for example. And generally speaking, with Jupiter getting into Pisces through about May of 2022, we may expect increased focus and increased news about excessive precipitation, be it snowstorms, floods, rains, and especially peaking late March and into early April, especially April 4th and 5th. There may really be some bad floods in one or more areas in the world, and I don't know exactly at this point. I didn't have time to look really at every country, but it could be in areas like Manila, and one area in particular that stood out to me that has a chart where these negative transits unfortunately make difficult transits to it right around again end of March, early April of next year. And then for getting into February of 2022, for China, 7th and 8th look again somewhat difficult in the sense that there may be some increased focus on financial regulations, perhaps crack down on cryptocurrencies yet again, and or some other regulations that may affect the value of its own currency as well as value of cryptocurrencies as well. And generally speaking for China, the entire, I guess on a positive note, the entire month of January may see focus on things like making some investments in or improving areas related to IT, telecommunications, airlines, any sort of high-tech projects, or improving maybe how the electric vehicles are produced, or how they get basically how their power stations function, or some innovative ways of producing computers, electric batteries, or coming up with new social media platforms, or basically making some sort of innovation or improvement to basically use either robotics or maybe building a new airport or improving like airspace projects of some sorts. Basically some kind of more increased or the increased focus for China in January and these kind of innovative high-tech sort of airspace or electricity power related projects. And as I mentioned, globally, March 2nd seems to be an important time where there may be increased news about either financial regulations or some important either bills being signed or passed, or some really major financial deals being reached. And this does specifically make an important aspect to US chart. And in the US chart, it affects also the second house of banks and finance. So it's possible that right around 2nd of March, there may be some announcements. Perhaps it will be about rates or bank regulations or loans or decisions about debt. And that's globally, but also I think specifically relevant for the US. As I mentioned, also at the end of March, right around the 31st of March is going to be important in terms of either increased floods, but also there could be, like with floods of water, but also generally floods or excessive overabundance or I guess oversupply of things that are related to Neptunian areas. So perhaps again, too many drugs are flooding the country, or there are too many oil tankers parked sort of offshore, or things that are again perhaps are related to like beverages, something that basically is in excess. And if indeed there is a oversupply, that's where we may expect another sort of bubble forming right around January, end of March into early April, where areas and domains related to Neptune, so again, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, oil, for example, if there are indeed excessive prices at the time, and I do think that prices of, say, oil and gas will peak at that time, that's when things may go down on some over supply, or on maybe another scare about another wave of some pandemic, or on problems with delivery of something, and basically there could be a price reversal for all the different products or businesses that are related to Neptune. Again, chemicals, oil, pharmaceuticals, as well as maybe if there's a theater chain or something like that. Those are the areas to look for, and where they may peak right around end of March and early April. And generally speaking, early April is a time that's prone to excessive floods, excessive precipitation, and industrial accidents involving, again, oil spills, spill of some pollutants, such as some, what previously had happened, there was some cyanide spilled at like gold mines, things like that. So basically time where basically there's too much water, or too much of something that's like this liquid polluting element, or could be also infectious disease. That's something that spreads and is seen as basically a contaminant, and that's again peaking right around early April. After that, again, I'm going to separately put out a 2022 predictions, but just to quickly mention, summer of 2022 looks again specifically bad for China in terms of floods. Then August 1st, plus minus a few days, globally looks an important day where there may be additionally some either major accidents, bad weather, or industrial scale kind of industrial accidents. Let's see. And then after that, as I mentioned, September, from about mid-September to the end of October, and especially around October 11 is when we may have another period where there may be some concerns about like steel mining, those areas kind of going down, and also problems for cryptocurrencies or digital assets due to concerns about some overregulation, or due to some basically financial restrictions. And generally speaking, for the US, this upcoming year, 2022, we'll see a lot of important changes, and including into, I guess, it will continue through about early 2024, through about February of 2024, but 2022 in particular will be quite significant. And that's because of the Pluto return that's coming up for the US, or is, I guess, already in effect. And then specifically, interestingly, right around the date of the 2022 elections is going to happen on the total lunar eclipse, and there will be an difficult transit of Uranus to the nodes right at the same time. So on the one hand, it could be a really like a difficult, tense time where there may be a lot of changes, a lot of surprises, a lot of kind of shocking events, where there may be just generally feeling of instability. And also that particular time, right around early November, especially around November 8th, is also going to be significant for Turkey and China, from what I can see from their charts, where there too may be some either instability, and it could be maybe like a major earthquake or some other kind of shakeup. And so that's another time where both globally and specifically for at least US, China and Turkey, I see some difficulties, which again could be just a natural event like an earthquake, or it could be just some surprising but an unpleasantly surprising, shocking event where things just kind of feel less stable at that time. And let's see, and then there's some more exciting things to come, and even into 2023, but I will have to save that for a different video. Until then, I hope you're having a good week and you're enjoying your holiday break. Hopefully you're taking some time off and you're enjoying lots of cool videos like mine, and come back and check me out next week. Until then, bye.